everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film another installment of my Q&A videos. These are the questions that you left in the comment section on my announcement that I had reached 3,000 subscribers. So this is the celebration of me reaching 3,000 subscribers, answering all of your questions. So let's just get to it. I have my paperwork. I'm going to try to get through as many of these as I can in 20 minutes, and we'll just go on from there. I think if I work quickly, I can get, with this video and maybe one more video, I will have all the questions answered. So let's just get to it. I need to put on my readers because I can't see anymore without them. So Justine asks, how did you get into reading? Do you come from a family of big readers, or was there anyone that was influential in that way when you were a child or a teenager? I do come from a family of readers. I wouldn't necessarily call them big readers, although my mother is quite a big reader. My mom read all the time when I was younger, when she had time, which wasn't a lot, but she read to us. I think my sister and I, she read to us. She made sure books were always available to us. There were a lot of books in our house, and we were allowed to read whatever we wanted to. She didn't put any restrictions on what we read. And I can remember my grandmother was a big reader, and my aunt. And so it seemed like I was around a lot of people who were big readers. And then I always had teachers who encouraged me in my reading as well. And particularly I had a high school teacher who was handed me books to read. She saw my interest and provided me with books that she thought I would find interesting. So she really encouraged me to read as well. So yes, absolutely. How did I get into reading? Beyond the fact that mom always read to us when we were kids, I just always was interested in books. I was fascinated with them from a young age, and I always wanted to read. Even before I could read, I was like pushing to learn how to read. So I just happened to be one of those kids who was really into it right from the beginning. And then Joss Ryder 7841 asks, what book do you always find yourself recommending? And I have two here that I want to share that I think I recommend quite often. The first one is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. This is Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. This is a book of nature writing. Robin Wall Kimmerer is an Indigenous person herself and a botanist, and she writes so beautifully about the natural world, about her culture and how that plays into what she understands about the natural world. Her writing, she writes about her life, like just interweaves it all together. I think she is just amazing, and this book is just amazing, and I highly recommend anybody that's interested at all in nature writing to pick up Braiding Sweetgrass. And then I also have to always recommend my favorite work of nonfiction, Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, which is medicine and what matters in the end. I talked about this in one of the previous videos as being my favorite nonfiction. And this is all about the difference between the quality of life at the end of your life and the quantity of life at the end of your life, and which matters most. And spoiler alert, it's the quality, not the quantity. So definitely recommend that one all the time as well. And then Britta Bowler, of course, wants to know how you pick out the books that you want to buy and or read. I am very much influenced by BookTube in what I certainly nowadays in terms of what I buy and what I want to read. And I'm also now, because I'm being so intentional about what I purchase, because I've been tracking my physical TBR and wanting to be very intentional about the books that I purchase and bring into my home, I tend to only buy books that I need for a specific purpose, like either a buddy read or because I'm reading it for a BookTube prize or some other project related reason to purchase the book. And I always weigh, is it a book that I need to have the physical copy? Would it be better to listen to it on audiobook? Can I get it from my library? All of those kind of questions. There are certain authors that I will always purchase their books because they're favorite authors. Like, for example, Stephen King. I buy all of his books in hardcover because I want to collect them, and I have been collecting them my whole life not my whole life, but since I was a teenager, so close enough. And I also, like, if I'm following a series, like Britta and I are reading the Thomas Lindley Inspector, police detective type mystery series. And I've been buying those as paperbacks because I think for mysteries, they're fun to read in those little mass market paperbacks. So yeah, that's usually when I'm buying something, it's because of a project or a purpose, a buddy read, some reason I need to read it right now. As far as the books that I want to read and how I pick those, I am also a very process-oriented reader. I am not really a read by whim kind of reader. I do like to mix up my genres, and I like to be reading a bunch of different stuff at once, but I usually have a purpose for what I'm picking up. Either somebody suggested it to me, or I'm in the middle of reading about a particular topic and I've really gotten into it. I am not really one to like go stand in front of my shelf and just like scan what's there and like pick something out. I usually have a reading theme in mind. Like a lot of times, like March has tons of reading themes going in on BookTube, and I usually like try to pick a book for each theme and see if I can get to them in the month. So I'm always very purposeful in my reading picks. Like I just like that process of like setting a list and trying to read through everything, or setting myself a project and trying to read through all that. Like I find that very satisfying. And so that's how I generally, I'm not one to pick just by whim because of my mood. Typically I don't. Let's see what else. Doris asks, what are my 3 favorite Book Naturalist books so far? So the Book Naturalist Book Club is a book club that I run with Doris, where we pick, every month we pick a book that is a book of nature writing to read together and talk about. And I think that was a very hard question that she asked me, because I've really been thinking about this, and it was really hard to narrow it down to only 3. There's so many books that we've read for the Book Naturalist Book Club that I have loved. So I did pick out 3, even though it was really hard, Doris. So the first one is a book we read in the first year of the Book Naturalist Book Club, and that is World of Wonders, In Praise of Fireflies, Whale Sharks, and Other Astonishments by Amy Nizuka Matadel. And this is an essay collection, and each of the essays is about, she connects different animals or plants to things in her life. And this was just such a gorgeous little book. Like, has lovely illustrations. The writing is really awesome. She has such thoughtful things to say about nature and how the intersection of nature and her life. So yeah, World of Wonders, that's the first book I would choose. The second is Gathering Moss by, again, Robin Wall Kimmerer. This is a natural and cultural history of mosses. Now, you might not think, you're like, Heidi, really? Mosses? That's like, how can you pick that? Robin Wall Kimmerer could write about anything, and I would find it amazing. She is such an incredible author. And this book was so interesting. It also has cute little illustrations of mosses. The way that she writes about plants and the forest and her work studying mosses is just so engaging. I find her wisdom about the world to be really speaks to the way that I see the world and the things that I think about, and how we're all connected and we're not separate from nature in any way just because we're human beings, Homo sapiens. And I just love her, the way she sees the world and the knowledge that she has to share, and how she shares that in her writing. So definitely recommend Gathering Moss. And then last but not least is a book that ended up on my favorites list for 2023, and that's Bitch on the Female of the Species by Lucy Cook. And this is all about gender in animal species, and what humans have designated to be gender doesn't really work in a lot of species. The binary doesn't work. And I found this book to be so informative and so funny. Lucy Cook is an excellent writer and really can impart scientific information in a very humorous way. So if that's a topic that you're interested in, and you're looking to dip your toes into science writing, and you really are scared because you think science writing is not for you, I would highly recommend Bitch. I think you would find it really entertaining. So the next question is, what is your favorite, this is from Lady King 119. The first question is, what is your favorite nonfiction book of all time? And again, I am going to count Being Mortal by Atul Gawande as my favorite nonfiction book of all time. This may change. I have read a lot of really great nonfiction over the years, but this one just speaks to me, and I keep thinking about it, and I keep coming back to it, and I keep recommending it. So for now, it is at the top of the heap. And then for best fiction book, I have two that I couldn't pick between the two of them because I love them both so much. And the first one is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I have this old hardcover copy of it, which has fabulous illustrations in it. I have read Pride and Prejudice multiple times. I do love a romance novel, and I do think that there's a difference between Jane Austen and like contemporary romance novels for sure. But the things that I love about like contemporary romance novels and the things that I love about Jane Austen are the same, like the wit and the humor and the sort of sarcastic remark off to the side. Like that's the kind of stuff that I love. I love that kind of witty banter and dialogue in my romances, and Jane Austen really has that, particularly in Pride and Prejudice. I also love when the male character does wrong and then figures out he does wrong and has to like apologize to the female lead. Like, and that scene in the letter, if you know, you know, love it in Pride and Prejudice. I just think that this book really is an example of why we still read classics. There's so much to be taken from them. There's so much to still, you know, mine from those pages. I think they're timeless. They just never get old. And I absolutely love that book. And then another book that I've talked about a ton on the channel, the Lord of the Rings series. I've just got book 1 here, The Fellowship of the Ring. Also include Hobbit, the Hobbit in all of this. But the Lord of the Rings, as I've talked about previously on the channel, really was the first time I can remember like being so immersed in a world of a story that I thought I was in that location, that I was in Middle Earth. I was on the journey with Frodo and Gandalf and Strider, and there was nowhere else I'd rather be than in that place and in that time and with those characters. And yeah, I love the immersiveness of the Lord of the Rings. I love the characters. I love the adventures they get up to. I love the message of the book. I just love all of it. So yeah, absolutely love Lord of the Rings. Favorite fiction of all time. And then Lady King also asks, what age were you when you started reading? Which I think I've talked about previously in another video, but I will briefly touch on it again. I think I memorized some stuff when I was about 4, and I did start kindergarten when I was 4. I was a young, my birthday was such that I was a young, just still a 4-year-old when I started school, and I was reading on my own by the end of kindergarten. And I was reading chapter books on my own in 1st grade. So I would have been 5 going on 6 when I was reading chapter books. So yeah, from a pretty young age, I was determined to read. I did not want to have to wait until my mother had time to read books to me. I wanted to be able to read them myself. So that is what I did. Becca Hamilton asks, what is your reading routine, and when and where do you usually read? I usually read anytime I can get a chance to, wherever I can get a chance to. But my routine generally is I don't read in the morning when I get up. I get up, I exercise, and I go through my, you know, getting ready for the day and going to work. And I cannot read in that time period because if I do, I have been known to be distracted enough by my book that I will be late for whatever it is I'm trying to go to in the morning, whether that be my job or school or whatever I was supposed to do in the morning. So I cannot read first thing in the morning unless I'm on vacation, or like sometimes on a weekend, I will lay in bed and read for an hour. But what I find if I do that is then like I find it really hard to like get the things done that I should be getting done. Like I have to like start my morning in a certain way in order to like get everything done. And if I don't do it that way, like my whole day gets thrown off. So I don't tend to read in the morning. I do like to read at lunch if I am working by myself, working from home and by myself. I like to read at lunchtime. And I also listen to audiobooks whenever I'm in the vehicle and by myself and driving, which I have to do a lot for work. So I do a lot of audiobook time. And then in the evening, if there's nothing else going on, I prefer to read rather than any other any other kind of thing that you could possibly do. I prefer reading. So I'm not a TV person. I watch very little TV, except for there are some sports that I really like, and there are a few different shows, but I don't watch them all the time. I don't watch movies. I don't play video games. I don't do any of that. I hang out with my family and my grandkids, and I don't read when I'm doing that generally. So when I'm in the evening, if I have a time to read, I have a chair and with a nice lamp, because the older you get, the more you need good light. And I sit in my chair and I read. And I always, even if I can't read in the evening, if stuff's going on or I'm at work or whatever and I can't read, I usually read at least a couple paragraphs before I fall asleep. Like, it really helps me shut my brain down and get ready to go to bed. I really need that. It's almost like that's the switch that tells my brain, okay, it's time to go to bed. And I generally have a nonfiction book on the bedside table to read right before I go to bed. And I also suffer from insomnia. And so I read a lot in the middle of the night. I tend to also read nonfiction for that, because if I pick up a fiction book in the middle of the night, I'm not going back to sleep. I'm going to get involved in that novel and I'm just going to read all night long. And I can't do that because I'm old and I need my rest. So I have to pick up a book that is a book that will allow me to put it down. And that's usually nonfiction. Although sometimes a classic will do it too, if I'm reading a particular kind of classic. So I think those are the questions that I wanted to answer in this particular video. I hope you enjoyed those answers. I hope I gave sufficient answers for those of you who asked the questions. I think that the last video will sort of be a hodgepodge of questions. There's some travel questions, there's some follow-up questions about my family, and just some sort of more general questions about me personally. So stay tuned for that. That video will be coming up soon, and I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read. I will talk to you later.